In the early 90s, hundreds of artists got together and sacrificed thousands of hours of their lives to the powers of clay, resin, metal and plastic, spending countless days and probably more than a few nights, all in pursuit of a singular goal: to try to convince us that machines can somehow learn to become human. Now these are the artists at the Stan Winston studio, who did most of the practical effects from Terminator 2. And this is me. I'm the guy creating the Kino Vibes course, cinematography for 3D artists. And in the process of doing that, I am recreating some of the most iconic film scenes fully in 3D. Only when I create stuff, it looks a lot less like this and a lot more like this. Now, to be clear, I didn't just wake up one day and decide, yes, I shall spend most of my waking hours staring straight into a rectangular flashing light bulb. What a grand idea. I don't think any of us did, and yet that is how many of us spend our days. I believe we're all born with a burning longing to create, to understand and discover the truth in the world around us by just reflecting it back onto itself, only from our point of view. To put it into 3 letters, art. I call this longing the ember. And as a kid, the ember is what drove me to the paintbrush, to the piano, to the camera, to the hammer, to the knife, maybe a bit too vigorously at times. And eventually, it drove me to the computer. And inside of that was a whole world, the likes of which I'd never seen before. It was a world where the ember had free reign, where it could do anything. Pictures, stories, films, music, all of which you could just sort of make by clicking. I must have made at least an album worth of songs before I even hit my teens. Each of them amazing. Terrible, yes, but amazing. And as the computers grew more powerful, the power of the ember grew with them. Their abilities became my abilities, but as the ember grew, it also began to mold itself around the shape of the tool it was using. What began as a sharp sword eventually became more of a crutch that I now need just to get by, in a very literal sense. And now, as the years arrange themselves into decades, here we are, you and I, just staring at different ends of the flashing light bulbs in front of us. But on this project, I'm going to do it differently. Now keep in mind that I'm specifically making a 3D scene here, a CGI scene, where the C and the G stands for computer and generated. And I'm going to step away from the computer as much as I can. If possible, try to touch something other than buttons with these hands. Bear with me and we will see how that goes. Now in this whole scene, this is the one shot that I want. It's not the most iconic shot in the whole film, but it's a perfect learning example for 3-point lighting, especially the kind that was all the rage at the turn of the decade into the 90s. Now inevitably, I will have to do some work in front of the soul-sucking light bulb behind me. So I'm gonna get that out of the way first. You know how the process goes? Start rough and then you're fine. If you don't know how it goes, I already have a free course about that on my site. So I'm starting by looking at reference clips over and over, looking for any clues to tell me how big things are in the scene and how far away they are. Meanwhile, I'm building the basics, the bare bones basics. Just an hour in and I'm already in a very familiar place. Eyes glazed, jaw slack, spine noodly. I'm poking around with the coordinates of these grey boxes in a simulated world. And I'm eyeballing things hard. Nothing's the right size, and everything's in the wrong place anyway. But then I stop myself. I take a step back, and I realize I am a numpty. My main reference for this environment is this clip. The establishing shot of the characters driving into the steelworks. So what I did was I figured out this is shot at the Kaiser steelworks, a steel plant that was later sold and shipped piece by piece to China. Now I dug into online photographic archives, looking for what the layout of the plant was originally and what plants of that type were generally like back in that day. My research eventually led me to a PDF of the Kaiser Steel 1953 General Catalogue, where they list their off-the-shelf products as well as their custom order capabilities. But more importantly, they also include the sections about the equipment they use for making those. Now, what's important to note here is absolute and total numpty. I fell down this whole rabbit hole while my reference clip was playing on my other screen. This continuous Russian arm type shot, giving an overview of the entire scene, a shot with plenty of static objects, points that could probably be tracked well enough to do a complete 3D match move solve. Turns out, yeah, it totally could. So I did that, and now I have the exact positions of just about everything in the scene. And just because I'm working tied to a screen doesn't mean I can't invite the real world into my work. I'm so used to my standard digital way of working, it takes me a long time to even look for a better solution, even when I'm staring directly at one. I still don't have the scale of things in the scene, but that's actually a relatively easy one, because all I have to do is search for the height of Arnold, and then I'll know for sure how big he is compared to the rest of the scene. Or will I? There is a theory that Arnold's height, in fact, often has been exaggerated with the help of posing and lifted saws. Let's just say he was about 185 and a bit. Okay, rough stuff, all done, with a bit of equally rough lighting, also done. Now it's time for the real deal. Okay, not the real deal as in the real world sense, but as in the CGI real deal, making all the assets good and proper and whatnot. This is also screen work, but it has to be done. And there were a lot of assets. This big saucepan is apparently called a ladle, and I had some fun with the particle systems to cover that one with slag. And kit bashing together a cryoco truck was also quite a bit of fun. It's not that working in front of a screen isn't creative, it absolutely is. Putting all the details in, coming up with interesting ways to do things, it is a craft, no doubt about it. And that does feed the ember. But doing art through so many layers of circuits and code, it makes for a very monosensory experience. It's working within a narrow spectrum of your senses. But with all these whatnots done, there is only one thing left before I can step away from the glow of the screen, and that is online shopping. Now, two things I need. First, some new threads, a super slick leather jacket. Nice, very nice, I'll have that one. And I think I can treat myself to a new cranium as well. A little something made of hyperalloy, just because I'm feeling fancy. Bye! This is the robot that's going to drive me and the Ember back out into the real world. In the computer, I already have this boyo, and he's been cast as Arnold Schwarzenegger in my remake of Terminator 2. But I will need to give him some serious facial damage to look the part, and underneath all that torn skin, I will put this here lovely cranium. So to do that, all I need to do is to take this and just sort of stick it like that stick it into the computer. Simple enough. Now, maybe you've noticed that you can still hear me, even if I'm on the move, and that's because I have a new mic. I'm guessing the sound won't be quite as rich as my other bigger mic, but it's just so much more flexible to use, which hopefully should result in more videos in the end. And I think that's it. Cool. Welcome, ladies and lads, to the real world, away from the screen. Now, behind me, this is a screen actually, but I'm only going to be using it for a background for this. You see, what I'm about to do is, well, it's something that only requires 4 things. It's a fishing line, a brush, the skull, and this. A big old sack of vegan protein powder, chocolate flavored. What you do is you absolutely douse the skull in the protein, and then you dangle it from the fishing line in front of the screen. You spin that skull around and you snap a bunch of photos of it. And then you summon the ghost of Pythagoras to turn those photos into a 3D model. Now on Patreon, I have a complete tutorial for this whole process, but that is about the gist of it, really. And the results, they look pretty good. Yeah, nice one, Pythagoras. Right, so what was the other thing? Oh yeah. Okay, so originally my idea was to wear this leather jacket myself and stand very, very still while my wife took the photos of me. But I don't quite think that's going to work. So I will have to go for a plan B.
Protein. Awesome. I love protein. Protein.
Huh? Yeah, this'll do. At least with a bit of cleanup work. True and Titan patrons get the raw scan of the skull and the leather jacket to play around with. So if you're a member, don't forget to download. With that jacket nice and cleaned up, I can just put that onto our Z800 and make him nice and toasty. Now, of course, I must ruin his face to fit that hyper-alloy skull in there. Hopefully he doesn't mind too much. And then there's the classic struggle of vibe-rigging this guy and trying to find mocap data that fits with the action in the scene. Of course, I also have the second character to make, although he is pretty simple in comparison. And then there are some more assets that I need to make. There's particle work and smoke simulation, better lighting of course, and blowing up the second guy, because that happens in the film. And then I also need to take these assets and make sure that they're all the way that I want them. And just like that, I am back in front of a screen again. It's not that I mind the digital work itself. I quite enjoy it. I even love it at times. But in a few weeks, few months, when I look back on this project, I'm not going to remember a single one of those keystrokes I made, but I will remember the smell of chocolate in the air as I was spreading protein powder all over a second-hand leather jacket, and spreading it all over the rest of my home, for that matter. Now, at times, doing art with a lifeless machine like this feels like voluntarily sauntering into Plato's cave and just getting comfortable in a seat. Like turning away from the truth of reality in favor of a distorted reflection of it. But maybe that's missing the bigger picture. Because it's not actually the lifeless machine I'm interacting with, or even its digital canvas. The screen is just a membrane, and I'm interacting through it. And on the other side of that membrane is you, and me, and billions of other people. I press a key on this side, and months, maybe years later, you feel it in some small way on your side. And if I do it just right, maybe your ember just flickers a little in recognition. That's why I've started doing these videos properly. That's why I started the Stay in Motion Society on Discord. Granted, I'm pretty shit at being active in there myself, but that's besides the point. The point is to remember the bigger picture, to not forget who we're really interacting with when we press these buttons. And getting your hands dirty with protein powder once in a while helps too. Anyway, let's see what this interaction with a lifeless machine got us. And until next time, stay in motion.
Hasta la vista, baby.